Have you ever felt like a ghost in your own life? The silent, invisible engine that keeps everything running smoothly, the secret architect of someone else's success, only to be treated like a piece of the furniture you so carefully selected? We convince ourselves that our contribution is enough, that the quiet satisfaction of a job well done is its own reward. But what happens when the silence is no longer peaceful, but deafening? What happens when the person who should see you most clearly looks right through you? Alara Vance knew this feeling intimately. It was the air she breathed in the sprawling, minimalist mansion she had designed, the taste of the gourmet meals she had planned, the texture of the life she had built for her partner, Marcus Thorne. To the outside world, Marcus was a titan, the charismatic founder of Innovate Dynamics, a man whose genius was matched only by his charm. He moved through their life like a conquering hero, his voice booming, his laughter filling every room, his hand always ready to accept another accolade. Alara moved through it like a whisper, her presence essential but unacknowledged. The true genius, the intricate strategies, the pinpoint accurate market predictions that had made Innovate Dynamics a darling of the stock market, they all originated in the quiet study where Alara spent her nights, her mind a whirlwind of data and intuition. But tonight, the whisper was about to become a storm. At a dinner party celebrating the company's latest triumph, a triumph born from an algorithm Alara had spent 6 months perfecting, Marcus was holding court. He raised his glass, the crystal glinting under the recessed lighting. To vision, he toasted, his eyes sweeping over his adoring audience. To seeing the future and bending it to your will, a guest, a sycophantic journalist, asked Marcus, "That predictive model is revolutionary. How did you even conceive of it?" Marcus chuckled, placing a proprietary hand on Alara's shoulder. "I have a secret weapon," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "My beautiful, dreamy muse, Alara. She was pottering around in her garden one day and said something about how sunflowers follow the sun, and boom. The inspiration just hit me." The table erupted in appreciative laughter. Alara's blood ran cold. He had reduced her magnum opus, a complex piece of financial engineering, to a gardening anecdote. She felt the familiar sting of erasure, but this time, it was different. It was public. It was final. She opened her mouth to speak, a small, hesitant sound. "Actually, Marcus, it was based on..." He cut her off with a booming laugh, patting her head as if she were a child or a pet. "Oh, listen to her, trying to understand the big numbers. It's adorable. Don't you worry your pretty little head about it, darling. You just keep being my inspiration." The table laughed again. In that moment, something inside Alara didn't just break, it solidified. The years of quiet resentment, of swallowed words and invisible labor, coalesced into a single, diamond-hard point of resolve. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply smiled, a small, serene smile that didn't reach her eyes. The party continued, but Alara was already gone. Later that night, while Marcus slept the sound, dreamless sleep of the truly arrogant, she moved with silent purpose. She didn't pack clothes or jewelry. She packed the things that were truly hers, 3 worn leather-bound notebooks filled with her equations and strategies, a sleek black external hard drive containing every line of code she had ever written, and the original incorporation documents for the holding company that legally owned the intellectual property, a detail Marcus, in his haste to claim ownership of the glamour, had overlooked years ago. He thought it was just a tax shelter she'd set up. He had no idea it was the vault. She slipped out of the grand front door, the heavy wood closing behind her with a barely audible click. She didn't look back. The ghost had left the building. Alara's first stop was not a friend's house or a luxury hotel, but a simple, anonymous apartment building on the other side of the city. The unit was small, clean, and blessedly empty. It was a blank canvas. Standing in the middle of the bare living room, bathed in the orange glow of a single street lamp outside, she felt a profound sense of calm. The weight of the mansion, of Marcus's suffocating ego, began to lift. She took out her phone, her fingers moving with precision. Her first call was to an all-night locksmith. Her voice was level, betraying no emotion. I need a complete security overhaul at 14 Belvedere Crest, she said, giving the address of the house she had just left. Every lock, physical and digital. New keys, new codes. The master access is to be assigned to a new account. I'm sending the credentials now. The second call was to the security firm that monitored the property. She changed the safe words, the access protocols, everything. The house was no longer her home. It was a fortress she was sealing from the inside out. Then, she sat down at the small, cheap desk she'd had delivered earlier that week, opened her laptop, and began the real work. With a few keystrokes, she logged into the central nervous system she had built for Innovate Dynamics. It was a beautiful, intricate web of data, finance, and logistics, and she held every master key. One by one, she began to revoke access. Marcus's administrative privileges to the core financial dashboards gone. His access to the strategic planning servers denied. His ability to access the proprietary analytics software revoked. She moved through the digital architecture of his empire like a phantom, systematically and dispassionately dismantling his control. Each click was a reclamation. She wasn't destroying the company. She was reclaiming her work, securing the intellectual property that was legally hers through the holding company he'd never bothered to understand. She was simply cutting off the man who had used it as his personal crown. Meanwhile, Marcus stumbled home hours later, flushed with victory and expensive whiskey. He fumbled for his keys, humming to himself. He slid the key into the lock. It didn't turn. He frowned, trying again. Nothing. Annoyed, he punched his code into the digital keypad. Access denied. A flicker of confusion crossed his face. He tried again. Access denied. The annoyance curdled into anger. What the hell, he muttered. He pulled out his phone and called Alara. It went straight to voicemail. Alara, pick up. The door isn't working. Did you change the code again without telling me? His tone was impatient, commanding. He called again. Voicemail. Now a cold dread began to seep through the alcoholic haze. He started banging on the door, the sound echoing in the silent, wealthy street. Alara, open this door right now. What kind of childish game is this? Alara. The only answer was the chirping of crickets and the silent, unblinking eye of the security camera she had just reconfigured. The man who thought he owned the world was locked out of his own house, his power suddenly, inexplicably, gone. The panic had begun. The next morning, the chaos that had begun on Marcus's doorstep spread like a virus to the gleaming glass tower of Innovate Dynamics. The office, usually a hive of smug efficiency, was in a state of barely controlled panic. Key systems were unresponsive. Financial data streams were frozen. The meticulously prepared presentation for their most important investor, the formidable Miss Sterling, was locked away in a secure partition of the server that no one could access. Marcus, having spent a fitful night in a hotel after his security card to the office building also failed, stormed in, his face a mask of fury and sleeplessness. He barked orders, his voice raw. Get IT down here. Why can't I access the Sterling projections? Get me the Q3 analysis. Now. But his team could only stare back with wide, helpless eyes. The head of IT, a man Marcus had always considered a glorified technician, looked pale. Sir, the entire strategic analysis server is firewalled. The access credentials, they've been changed at the root level. We can't get in. It's like the architect just vanished and took all the blueprints with them, architect. The word hung in the air. Marcus's blood ran cold. It was Alara's term for herself, a little joke between them. He had always laughed it off. Now, the joke was on him. He felt a wave of nausea. She wasn't just the back-end stuff, she wasn't just his muse, she was the entire goddamn foundation. He tried to project confidence, to bluff his way through the morning meeting, but the bravado was thin. Without Alara's data, his words were just empty noise. He was a charismatic frontman without a song to sing. Desperate, he retreated to his office and started making calls, not to fix the problem, but to craft a narrative. He called his mother first. She just left, Mom. Walked out. After everything I've given her. She's trying to sabotage me. She's unhinged his mother, who had always viewed Alara as a quiet but unsuitable accessory for her brilliant son, was instantly sympathetic. That ungrateful little thing. How dare she? Don't worry, son. You're better off without her. You built that company with your own two hands. He then called his inner circle of friends and senior VPs, spinning the same tale of betrayal and instability. They readily agreed, their own positions tethered to Marcus's success. She was always strange, one said. Too quiet. You can't trust people like that. They were the chorus of enablers who had benefited from Alara's silent labor while reinforcing Marcus's delusion that he was a lone genius. They vilified her to protect their own comfortable reality. But reality had other plans. Out in the real world, the market was beginning to notice the tremors. An automated trading alert was triggered by the sudden lack of data flow from Innovate Dynamics. A financial blogger noted the strange silence from a company that was usually so masterful at managing its message. The stock, which had been on a relentless climb, began to dip. It was a small dip, but it was a sign. The intricate machine Alara had built, and had so carefully maintained, was grinding to a halt. And Marcus, the man who had claimed to be its master, had no idea how to turn it back on. The panic was no longer just his, it was becoming corporate. The boardroom at Innovate Dynamics was a chamber of ice. At the head of the long, polished table sat Ms. Evelyn Sterling, founder and CEO of Sterling Capital, the primary investor who had bet billions on Marcus's supposed vision. She was a woman in her late 60s, with steel gray hair pulled back in a severe bun and eyes that could dissect a balance sheet or a man from 100 paces. She had built her empire from nothing, battling her way through a world that had consistently underestimated her. She did not suffer fools, and she despised bluster. Marcus stood at the front of the room, sweating under the cool fluorescent lights. The presentation on the screen behind him was a pathetic imitation of the usual slick, data-rich masterpieces. It was all fluff, buzzwords, and stock images. The numbers were generic, the projections vague. Miss Sterling listened without expression, her fingers steepled, her gaze unwavering. She let him talk for 10 minutes, his voice growing increasingly desperate as he tried to fill the silence with his fading charm. Finally, she raised a single, elegant hand. The motion was small, but it cut through Marcus's babble like a guillotine. "Mr. Thorne," she said, her voice quiet but carrying immense weight. "Stop," Marcus froze, a half-formed platitude dying on his lips. "For 5 years," Miss Sterling continued, her eyes narrowing slightly, "I have received quarterly analyses from this company that were more than just reports. They were works of art. Predictive, insightful, almost unnervingly accurate. They were the reason I invested in you. This," she gestured dismissively at the screen, "is garbage. It's the kind of PowerPoint a panicked intern would throw together an hour before the meeting. So, I will ask you a simple question. What has fundamentally changed in your organization since the last quarter?" Marcus swallowed hard. The truth felt like swallowing glass. "Nothing has changed, Miss Sterling. We're just recalibrating a few internal systems." A minor operational hiccup, her eyes bored into him. "Do not lie to me, Mr. Thorne. I did not build my company on lies, and I do not invest in them. The intelligence of your operation has vanished overnight. The strategist, the analyst, the person whose mind produced those reports, they are clearly no longer at the helm. Who is it? Who is the ghost in your machine?" The directness of the question disarmed him completely. His carefully constructed facade shattered. He stammered, his face pale. It was my partner, Alara Vance. She handled some of the back-end analytics. The data mining, he tried to make it sound trivial, administrative. "She's taken a personal leave of absence." Miss Sterling leaned forward, her expression one of dawning, dangerous clarity. "Mr. Thorne, back-end analytics do not create predictive models that outperform the market by 60% for 5 consecutive years. Data mining does not produce the kind of strategic foresight I saw in those documents. You weren't the genius, were you? You were just the one standing at the podium." She stood up, her presence filling the room. "You have 48 hours to fix this operational hiccup and get your strategist back." or Sterling Capital will begin its own recalibration. Starting with our investment in this company, she walked out of the room, leaving behind a silence so profound it was like a physical blow. Marcus stood alone, exposed and terrified. The perceptive authority figure had seen the truth, and the clock was ticking. Miss Sterling was not a woman who waited for others to solve her problems. The moment she returned to her own offices, she summoned her top forensic accounting and data analysis team. "I want to know everything about Innovate Dynamics," she commanded, her voice crisp. "Not the story they sell, the reality. I want to know who built their core systems. I want to see the digital signature on every key algorithm. I want to find the architect." Her name is Alara Vance. The team, accustomed to their boss's relentless drive, dove into the digital ether. What they found was staggering. They peeled back the layers of Marcus Thorne's public persona and discovered a foundation built entirely by someone else. Alara Vance's name was on the source code for the company's revolutionary software. The initial patents for their core technologies were filed under a holding company, Aura Holdings LLC, with Alara Vance as the sole registered agent. The investment strategies that had yielded such incredible returns were documented in meticulous detail in strategy papers authored by E. V. It was all there, a mountain of irrefutable evidence. Miss Sterling reviewed the findings in her office, a grim satisfaction on her face. It was just as she suspected. Marcus wasn't the visionary, he was the vessel. Alara was the source. This was no longer just about protecting an investment. It had become a mission. Miss Sterling saw a reflection of her own past struggles in Alara's story, the brilliant woman working in the shadows while a charismatic man took the credit. She felt a surge of protective anger. She had to find her. "Get me a location for Alara Vance," she told her head of security. "Be discreet. No contact. I just need to know where she is." Meanwhile, Marcus's world was imploding. The 48-hour deadline from Ms. Sterling felt like a death sentence. He was trapped in a prison of his own making, a gilded cage built with someone else's tools. His attempts to replicate Alara's work were laughable failures, exposing his complete incompetence to his own staff. His panic escalated into a frantic, desperate search. He drove to the homes of Alara's few friends, but they hadn't seen her. He called her parents, who were as bewildered as he was. She had vanished. His voicemails to her devolved from feigned concern to angry accusations, and then, finally, to pathetic pleading. "Alara, please call me. We can talk this out. I know I messed up. I was a jerk. Just tell me what you want. A new car? That jewelry you wanted? Anything." Then, an hour later, "Damn it, Alara, you are destroying everything. Our life. My company. Do you have any idea how selfish you're being? You owe me. You think you could have had this life without me." And then, near midnight, a choked, broken message: "I need you. I can't. I can't do this without you. Please come home." Each message was a testament to his complete and utter failure to understand. He still thought this was about a transaction, about something he could buy back. He had no concept of what he had truly lost. It wasn't a partner he was missing. It was the very soul of his enterprise. And she had made herself a ghost he could no longer find. While Marcus was spiraling in his self-made tempest, Alara was experiencing a profound and quiet rebirth. Her small, Spartan apartment had transformed into a sanctuary of creation. The chaos of her old life was replaced by the focused hum of a powerful computer and the scratch of a pen on paper. She had her notebooks, her hard drive, and most importantly, her mind, untethered for the first time from the need to feed Marcus's ego. She wasn't hiding, she was incubating. She worked with a joyful intensity she hadn't felt in years, mapping out new ideas, refining old algorithms, designing not just a piece of software, but an entire ecosystem of financial intelligence. This was not about revenge. It was about resurrection. She was not tearing down Marcus's company, she was simply building her own ark, letting the flood of his incompetence wash away the world he had falsely claimed. She was rediscovering herself, not as a muse or a secret weapon, but as the prime mover, the creator. The silence was no longer a sign of her erasure, but of her deep concentration. The anonymity was not a weakness, but a strength, giving her the space to build without distraction. One afternoon, as she was lost in a complex data model, a firm, decisive knock echoed on her door. Her heart gave a single, sharp jolt. Marcus. Had he found her? But the knock was different. It lacked his usual arrogant impatience. It was measured, respectful. Cautiously, she walked to the door and peered through the peephole. A woman stood in the hallway, impeccably dressed, with an air of quiet authority. It was Evelyn Sterling. Alara's mind raced. How? Why? She took a deep breath, her hand resting on the doorknob, and made a decision. She was done hiding. She opened the door. Miss Sterling's sharp eyes met hers, and for a moment, neither woman spoke. There was a flicker of recognition in Miss Sterling's gaze, not of a face she had seen before, but of a spirit she understood. Miss Vance, she said, her voice direct but not unkind. May I come in? Alara nodded, stepping aside to let her into the small apartment. Miss Sterling's gaze swept over the room, not with judgment at its simplicity, but with understanding at its purpose. She saw the whiteboards covered in equations, the powerful computer setup, the stacks of research papers. She was not looking at a fugitive's hideout, she was looking at a genius's workshop. I'm not here on behalf of Marcus Thorne, Miss Sterling began, getting straight to the point. She placed a thin portfolio on the small desk. I'm here on behalf of your work. She opened the portfolio. Inside were printouts of her original patents, copies of her strategy documents, a timeline of her digital contributions to Innovate Dynamics. It was Alara's entire hidden career laid bare. I've seen it, Miss Sterling said softly, her voice filled with a genuine respect that Alara had never experienced from a peer. It's brilliant. And I believe it belongs to you. Tears welled in Alara's eyes, hot and sudden. It wasn't pity she felt from this powerful woman. It was validation. It was the profound, soul-shaking relief of being truly seen, of having her silent, tireless work finally acknowledged for what it was. For the first time, she wasn't a ghost. She was an architect, standing in the presence of someone who knew exactly what that meant. Alara's initial wariness melted away under the warmth of Ms. Sterling's sincere validation. She listened, her heart pounding, as the older woman detailed how her team had uncovered the truth. For years, Alara had accepted her role in the shadows, convincing herself that Marcus's success was their success. Hearing her contributions enumerated by a titan of the industry, someone who owed her nothing, was a seismic shift in her perception of herself. She had known her own worth on an intellectual level, but she had never felt it acknowledged by the world. It was as if a light had been switched on in a room she had occupied in darkness for a decade. He didn't just take credit for your work, Miss Sterling said, her tone hardening as she thought of Marcus. He smothered it. He put your genius in a cage and called it a pedestal. That's a crime far worse than mere plagiarism. Then, Miss Sterling leaned forward, her expression shifting from one of sympathy to one of purpose. She had not come merely to offer validation, she had come with a proposition. I am not interested in salvaging Innovate Dynamics, she stated plainly. A structure built on a faulty foundation is not worth saving. It will collapse, and frankly, it should. What I am interested in is the architect. She paused, letting her words sink in. I am proposing a new venture. A partnership. I will provide the capital, the infrastructure, the legal and corporate muscle. You will provide the vision. We will build a company from the ground up, on a foundation of integrity and brilliance. Your brilliance. With your name, Alara Vance, on the door, Alara stared at her, speechless. This was a dream she had never even allowed herself to form. In her most ambitious private moments, she had imagined maybe starting a small consultancy, a quiet business of her own. But this was a seat at the head of the table, offered by one of the most powerful women in finance. It was terrifying and exhilarating. She looked around her small apartment, at the whiteboards filled with ideas that went far beyond anything she had ever implemented for Marcus. These were her true passions, the revolutionary concepts she had kept locked away in her own mind. Let him have the hollow shell he is so proud of, Miss Sterling continued, her voice a low, compelling hum. Let him watch it crumble into dust. We will not look back. We will build the future. Alara looked from Ms. Sterling's determined face to her own notebooks, filled with the evidence of her own capability. The fear began to recede, replaced by a surging tide of excitement and resolve. She had walked away from a life that was suffocating her. Now, she was being offered a chance to truly breathe, to build something that was authentically, unequivocally hers. She met Miss Sterling's gaze, and a slow, genuine smile spread across her face. A name on a door is more than just a name, Alara said, her voice finding a new strength. It's a promise. It's a statement of ownership. She extended her hand. When do we start? The news broke like a thunderclap across the financial world. It wasn't a press release. It was a formal announcement from Sterling Capital, a move designed for maximum impact. Sterling Capital announces seed investment of $100 million in Aura Analytics, a new firm founded by visionary strategist Alara Vance. The announcement included a brief, powerful bio of Alara, positioning her as the previously unsung genius behind the decade's most successful predictive financial models. It didn't mention Marcus or Innovate Dynamics by name, but it didn't have to. The implication was a surgical strike. The market, which abhors a vacuum and worships a compelling narrative, reacted instantly. The story was irresistible. The hidden gem, the ghost in the machine, stepping out of the shadows with the backing of a legend. Investors in Innovate Dynamics connected the dots with brutal speed. The architect was gone. The magic had left the building. A wave of panic selling hit Innovate Dynamics. The stock, which had been wobbling, now plummeted in a sheer, terrifying cliff dive. Within hours, it had lost 70% of its value. The hollow shell was imploding. Marcus saw the news on a television in his hotel bar, a glass of untouched scotch in his hand. His face went from ashen to purple with rage. He saw Alara's picture, a new one, professional and confident, radiating a power he had never seen in her. He saw her name, founder Alara Vance. He saw the name of her company, Aura Analytics, the same name as the holding company he'd ignored for years. It was a declaration of war. He stormed out of the bar and drove to Sterling Capital, barging past security and demanding to see Miss Sterling. He found her in her office, calm and composed. "What have you done?" he screamed, his voice cracking. "You poached my chief analyst. You stole my intellectual property. I'll sue you for everything you have." Miss Sterling looked at him not with anger, but with a cool, clinical pity. "You misunderstand the situation, Mr. Thorne," she said, her voice dangerously calm. "One cannot poach what was never employed. One cannot steal what was never yours. Alara Vance was not your talent. She was a hostage to your ego. She wasn't the analyst you kept in the back room. She was the architect you kept locked in the basement. She simply chose to walk out the door that you, in your arrogance, forgot to guard." The truth of her words hit him like a physical blow. He staggered back, speechless. The panic then spread to the chorus of enablers. His mother, his friends, his sycophantic VPs, the them who had so readily dismissed Alara, were now in a state of utter terror. Their own fortunes, their stock options, their comfortable lifestyles were all tied to the company that was now worthless. Their phones started blowing up Alara's, which she had now turned back on. The messages were a pathetic reversal of their earlier scorn. "Alara, darling, it's Marcus's mother. I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding. We should talk, Alara. It's Todd from the office. We all miss you. Maybe you can come back?" Marcus is willing to be reasonable. They were panicked, desperate to lure the ghost back to haunt the machine she had built, hoping she could save them. But the ghost was gone for good. Alara let the desperate calls and texts from her past go unanswered. They were noise from a world that no longer existed for her. Her focus was singular, her energy directed entirely forward. The launch of Aura Analytics was a whirlwind of exhilarating work. Miss Sterling was true to her word, providing a state-of-the-art office, a hand-picked team of the brightest minds in the industry, and complete creative freedom. A montage of Alara's new life would show her not as a shadow, but as a sun around which a new solar system was forming. We see her at a whiteboard, her hands a blur as she sketches out a revolutionary new concept, her team watching, rapt and inspired. We see her laughing with her colleagues, the easy camaraderie of people united by mutual respect. We see her standing in her new office, her name in elegant silver letters on the glass door, a quiet smile of ownership on her face. She was no longer invisible. She was vibrant, decisive, and fully in command of her destiny. Her work flourished in the light. The ideas she had kept hidden were now the foundational principles of aura analytics, and they were even more powerful than she had imagined. The company didn't just replicate her old success, it surpassed it, pioneering new fields of ethical AI and sustainable investment modeling. While Alara was rising, Marcus was hitting rock bottom. Innovate Dynamics officially filed for bankruptcy. The gleaming glass tower was shuttered, the employees laid off. Marcus was buried in lawsuits from shareholders and the board, accusing him of gross negligence and fraudulent misrepresentation. The charismatic titan was now a pariah, his name a cautionary tale whispered in boardrooms. We see him one last time, standing alone in the vast, empty living room of the mansion he could no longer afford. The furniture is gone, covered in white sheets, a ghost of a life that was never truly his. The silence in the house is no longer a sign of peace, but of profound, crushing emptiness. He looks at his phone, his fingers trembling slightly. He scrolls to Alara's contact. He types and deletes several long, rambling messages before finally settling on 5 simple words. He hits send. You were right. I'm sorry. Miles away, in her bustling office, Alara's phone buzzes. She glances at the screen and sees the message from Marcus. For a long moment, she just looks at it. A flicker of the past crosses her face, a trace of the pain, the frustration, the love she once had for the man he was supposed to be. But there is no anger, no bitterness, and no triumph. There is only a quiet, final release. It was the closing of a book she had finished reading long ago. With a soft sigh, she places the phone face down on her desk, turns back to the bright, eager faces of her team, and smiles a real, brilliant smile. All right, she says, her voice clear and strong. What's next? The final scene is a vast auditorium, packed to the rafters. The air hums with anticipation. On stage, bathed in a single spotlight, stands Alara Vance. She is the keynote speaker at the world's most prestigious technology and finance summit. She is poised, radiant, a picture of quiet power and earned confidence. She doesn't grip the lectern, she stands beside it, speaking directly and warmly to the thousands of people hanging on her every word. She shares her story, not with names or bitter details, but as a parable of value and visibility. There is a myth in our culture, she begins, her voice resonating through the hall, the myth of the lone genius. The singular hero who changes the world all by himself. But innovation is never a monologue, it is a conversation. True, world-changing ideas are born from collaboration, from respect, from the spaces in between people. They are born in the quiet work, the unseen labor, the dedication of those who don't seek the spotlight, but who simply seek to build something of value. The camera pans across the faces in the audience, young entrepreneurs, seasoned executives, students, all listening intently. For a long time, she continues, a note of personal reflection in her voice, I believed that my value was defined by my contribution alone, that the work would speak for itself. But I learned that work cannot speak if it is not given a voice. Your value isn't just in what you create, it's in your willingness to own it, to sign your name to it, to stand in the light beside it. As she speaks, the narrator's voice begins to overlay her own, breaking the fourth wall to speak directly to us. Alara was not a ghost. She was a powerhouse in disguise, waiting for her own permission to be seen. And when she finally decided to step into the light, the world had no choice but to look. Her story isn't just her own. It's a question for all of us. How many powerhouses do we walk past every day? In our homes, in our offices, in the mirror? How much genius do we leave unseen, unacknowledged, and unheard? The view returns to Alara, who is finishing her speech to a thunderous standing ovation. The narrator's voice delivers the final, heartfelt message. Her story is a reminder that your worth is not determined by who acknowledges it, but by the value you intrinsically hold and create. Sometimes, the most powerful move you can make is not to fight for a seat at someone else's table, but to walk away silently, change the locks on the door to your past, and go build your own damn palace. The screen fades to black, and the final call to action appears in text, voiced by the narrator. If this story resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to be reminded of their own power. And tell us in the comments below, when did you realize it was time to change the locks?